Derrick Morgan. Welcome to the Intangible podcast. It's been a fun project for me. This is a podcast talking about these intangibles that people can't see, the things that makes you who you are, that's driven you to be super successful in school, football career, but then also carrying that over into afterlife. And so I'm excited to jump into your journey this morning, talk about who you are, what made you who you are, and really get to learn about you. So welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Derrick, all right, man. I want to go back, again, you and I got a chance to get to know each other my couple years here with the Titans. Got a chance to lay hands on you here and there.
What were your years here?
13, 14.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, a couple rough years.
Rough.
Yeah.
Rough. It's a blur.
Yeah. We had a couple of rough years, but, just watching you as a leader in the locker room, watching you, how you prepare, how you played the game. It was truly special to see a guy who, has had some rough years here in Tennessee that never wavered from your standard of how you play the game. And so we're excited to dive into a lot of that portion of it. But before we get there, you grew up in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And, as a Southern guy, do I think about, that area as a football place? How did you get into football? What was your early upbringing that said, hey, this is something I may want to do in my career?
Well, how do you feel about football in Pennsylvania?
You got good football players. I'm not knocking it. Just got good football players, but it's just different.
It's definitely
the South. We don't have anything to do. You guys have a lot more to do out there. In the South. It's like, hey, you eat, breathe football, baseball. It's not a lot going on in these small towns that we grew up in. So
I'm messing with you. It's definitely a different brand of football, I would say, depending on where you're at in the country. But I would say, for me growing up, I wanted to be in the NBA. That was our culture up there. I'm from Coatesville, which is outside of Philly, and Rip Hamilton actually went to he's from my hometown and went to my high school, and so we grew up playing ball like every day. So that was my passion. And then in seventh grade middle school team, you're averaging 3 points a game. It's kind of like, hey, the writing's on the wall. And
that early in middle school, huh?
Yeah, like 7th, 8th grade, it's like, you could be a rebounder. I'm like, I'm not about to be a rebound. I'm not about to run all these suicides and sprints to go out there and So that wasn't working out for me. And so I was playing football and just started really realizing some success in the field. And when I got into 10th grade, I was given the opportunity. I remember I was in my stretch line before practice, and our D coordinator came up to me and was like, "Hey, how would you like to play on Friday nights?" I was like, "I'd love to play on Friday nights. Like, I'd skip all this JV stuff and let's get straight to it." And so I ended up starting as a sophomore and had a great season, and just started believing in myself more, and realized that I had opportunity to get a scholarship, and that was starting to create a path for myself.
Yeah.
And so that became just the beginning of me just kind of diving into this thing with all my energy and all my focus.
Did you start out on the offensive side of the ball or defensive side of the ball? Always been a defensive guy?
I was playing both. Both ways. You know how it is when we came up. Like you're playing, you don't really leave the field if you're good. And so I was playing defensive end and fullback, and then played running back my senior year.
Oh wow!
So I was 6'4", 250, like Brandon Jacobs out there. Just just running through folks and
long stride.
Yeah, they was chopping me down at the knees. But yeah, I played both sides.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it made me think about when you said, hey, how do you want to start? You want to start on Friday night as a sophomore. My high school coach, I thought I was a D tackle.
Okay.
And I go over and say, what do you want to play? I said, play defense, coach. So I'm on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm wrecking shop. I was a big kid. I'm wrecking shop. And then my head coach, he's like, hey, coach, I need to borrow Spencer for a second.
Uh-huh.
And so I go over to the offensive side of the ball. He draw up a plate. He said, hey, I want you to block this guy. just block down on this guy, and then we'll see what happens.
Mm.
And then we get up, line up. I block down on the 5 technique, and I just wash him all the way to the other side of the ball.
Yeah.
And then he looks over to the defensive coordinator and say, "Hey, coach, he belongs to me now. He's never coming back over there." And that's how I got to start playing offense. I hated playing offense, and I was like, all right, well, coach is like, hey, he's over here blocking, and so it worked out for me. So
wow, did you play both ways or?
Yeah. I started. I mean, high school, middle school, and all that. You play both ways, but
for sure.
Once you got to high school, my freshman year, I played a little bit both ways, but mostly on the.
They kept you over on the O side, like, hey.
He's like, I'm not.
Wow.
Yeah, no,
that's crazy.
No. Every now and again in high school, he'll let me play a little bit of goal line, but other than that, he's like, no, because I don't want anybody. No, he belongs to me now.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So you grew up? Did you grow up in a household with family members that was in the sports, or is just something that?
Not really, man. I grew up. It was primarily me and my mom for the most part. I was the only child on my mom's side, and didn't really have any great examples of athletes, in my family. Yeah. And so, I kind of just fell into it, man. It was just something that, I was big and athletic and, just naturally kind of gravitated towards it.
Yeah. So from a academic standpoint, we're going to get to this, but thinking about you going to Georgia Tech, was that like a strong upbringing part of your, did you have a mom or dad who really forced you into the academic side of things?
100%. Yeah, force is the right word. My mom was very adamant about education, and I was a latchkey kid. I would wake up, my mom's gone, I'd come home, my mom, wasn't home yet, but she was always instilling in me.
Hold on, time out. For this generation, explain that.
Latchkey kid. Latchkey kid is basically you're on your own type of thing. Right? Like I woke up.
At what age?
I was like 9.
You're 9, okay.
And I have a 9-year-old now, and I just can't fathom my daughter, like being that type of kid. But like it was different back then. I grew up in the 90s. So, like you'd be outside, you ride your bike all day long, you might cover 10, 15 miles on your bike and, in your neighborhood and be outside. And so my mom, she was working at QVC driving forklifts. And so she was out the house by 6 a.m., every day. And I'm waking up and I'm riding my bike to school. And so I had my own key, I have my own latch key to my front door. And so, yeah, man, education was always important. My mom always said, if you don't have all A's and B's, then you can't play anything. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so she knew I could do it. Like, right. You have kids too. It's like, hey, if you're a C student and that's what you are, then give me a C. Yeah. But if you're capable of an A and you're giving me a C, I got an issue with that. Right. So my mom, she knew I was capable of it. And so she wasn't letting up. And so that was instilled very early on, man. Like, and I was just like, man, I got to knock this homework out. And once I did, I could go and compete and, play sports or whatever I needed to do. So she did a great job of instilling that in me at an early age. And now I'm passing that forward on to my kids, and they don't enjoy it. But my son's really into golf right now. So he comes home and he thinks he can just hit balls for an hour, which I want him to do, but I want him to have a priority, of school and education. So, but yeah, man.
Yeah. Let's go back. You said something about that. I have this theory around, you said you grew up, you was riding your bike and you had your own key, you pretty much taking care of yourself, and when I look at this environment we're in right now, where there's a lot of structure for our kids, I think the structure is taking away our kids' ability to have this critical thinking, which we call mental performance, and like, how do you train that mental performance? And so when you were riding your bike around, and when you can now look back at that, what did that teach you about taking care of yourself and riding your bike, and the challenges that comes along with that, the decision making that you have to do, and then making sure that you're not in bad situations as a young kid. How did you work through that? How did you process that? Or did you even process it at
I don't
that time?
I don't think I was processing it consciously, but subconsciously, I think it was teaching me a sense of independence and responsibility. And, you know, it was like, hey, be home by the street lights. You know, by the time the street lights come on, you better be home. So that taught me time management. Yeah. And then it was, I had a lot of freedom though. So in that, I ended up in certain situations where, you know, we probably wouldn't want our kids in those situations, but I was able to learn from certain things. And I would kind of like, there's a Bible verse that says like teach and instruct the kids, you know, in their ways, and when they get grown, they won't depart from it, and the ways of the Lord, and they won't depart from it. And so I had a really good foundation of God in my life, and I was in the church, and I was, you know, doing these things, and so I would be put in situations where I would see wrong, and I would be like, okay, well, I have a choice on whether to engage in this, to do the right thing or do the wrong thing. I had a good sense of right and wrong. And so being in those situations allowed me to have a certain level of maturity and opportunities to make decisions. And, you know, like you said, critical thinking, you know, our kids are in a bubble. Yeah. Our kids are actually growing up privileged. Yeah. And they're growing up, and it's like, how do I simulate grit? Like, how do I facilitate challenging situations for our kids?
Because it's not their fault.
It's not their fault.
And it is their first time learning how to do that. But as a parent, how do we then facilitate that in a way that is not like how we grew up, but at least they get some type of experience around it?
Yeah. And as much as you tell them till your face is blue that you don't realize how we grew up, and man, your room was as big. They don't care about that stuff because it's not relative to them. Like they don't care that the size of their room is probably the size of like, it's probably 3 times the size of my room growing up. Right. They don't care about, I showed my son a picture of my kitchen apartment when me and my mom were living in this apartment. It was probably, the size of his toilet room. Like it was very, very small. Oh, yeah. He was in disbelief. He just couldn't believe. He's like, "This is where you lived here?" I was like, "Yeah, we lived here." So it's just hard, man. But I would say like I wouldn't substitute that freedom or that individual like experience of being able to roam and be in certain situations and have the ability to use my mind to like make decisions. And I think it helped me become more responsible and more independent, growing up. So.
Yeah, I constantly think about this, and, you know, especially in the work that we're doing and trying to figure out how do we meet this generation of athlete where they are to give them those type of experiences so they can start to build that foundation. Because I feel like it was a gift for us, even though it's, you know, it's completely different now, but it was a gift because our environment gave us that ability to learn and have all those different experiences. So, so as we start to look at the expansion of, you know, who you're becoming, and you start to get into your high school career, you know, we're going to transition back into, all right, you're, you know, as a sophomore, as you said, as a senior, you're a running back. You know, were you just labeled as an athlete, or are you a guy who is, you know, you highly recruited for a specific position?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was getting recruited mainly to be a defensive end. Some people had me as a defensive tackle because I was just big. I was probably like 250, 255 my senior year. So naturally people thought, oh, he's just going to keep gaining weight and he's going to fill out more. But I did gain a little bit more weight, but I didn't really get to a D tackle body. Yeah. I kind of just stayed, you know, right on the threshold. And because I didn't want to go in the interior.
What was it? What was that threshold?
Like 270.
Okay.
Like I couldn't, you know what I mean? And I think I grew like maybe another.
This is in high school, you're 270.
No, I was like 255 in high school. Okay. Maybe pushing 260 towards the end of the season. And so when I got to Georgia Tech, the highest I got down there was like 270-ish. Yeah. And so, like everybody that I was talking to was talking about defensive end. I think Penn State, they were looking at me as a potential like H-back in addition to defensive end. Yeah. But I made it clear that I wanted to play on the defensive side.
Yeah. What was your ranking coming out of high school?
I'm not gonna act like I don't know. I know it. It was.
We all know it.
Yeah, I was 76. I was 76 in the country, number 1 in the state, just like overall.
Right.
For I think it was Rivals.
Okay.
And so I was a 4-star recruit, and yeah, man, I had, mainly I mainly had ACC, Big Ten, couple Big 12, and then towards the end of like my season, maybe like I think Florida came in, Texas, but like I was graduating early, so I knew that come January 1 or January whenever, I was going to be on campus somewhere. So I didn't have a lot of time to like, just kind of, take the first couple months of the year and figure it out. I knew I was going to be on campus because I was my senior year. They told me, hey, if you only have X amount of credits left, if you sit in this room, it was basically like a room half the size of this, and you knock out these credits and you do these alternative courses, you could be done in December
and move on
and keep it moving.
Yeah.
Because in my hometown, it wasn't a lot going right.
Yeah.
It was, there was a lot of things that I could have gotten into that wasn't going to serve me and wasn't going to help me move forward.
Yeah.
So I knew it at the time that I had like this innate sense of urgency that I needed to get out and go forward.
Yeah.
Because I was seeing a lot of people around me that were just making poor decisions, getting in trouble. And so I knew I had to keep it moving. And so when I was going through my recruiting process, I took all 5 of my official visits, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, I know I want to go somewhere where I can play.
Yeah.
I don't want a red shirt. I'm not coming in here. I'm not coming in nowhere to red shirt. If I'm coming here early in January, I'm doing spring ball and I'm competing.
Yeah.
And so that was a big part of my decision making when I'm looking at different schools. And, I'm looking at places like Ohio State. I mean, they got 2 first rounders on the D-line. I'm probably not even going to sniff the field. So I'm like, well, I could go there and sit, or I think at the time it was so crazy. Calais Campbell, who's still in the league, was my host at University of Miami. He was my host.
He's still in the league.
He's still in the league.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at him like, I'm not about to beat him out. Like, you know what I mean? He's a dog. And at the time, Miami had some had some dogs in the D-line. And so when I was looking at Georgia Tech, I was like, these are some good guys, but like, I feel like I could compete. And there's not like a stacked depth chart in front of me. And the education was a quality education. So I was like, well,
it's a great education over there.
Yeah, I want to take advantage of that. Yeah. I'm in a new city. I'm in Atlanta. I had never been in the South. So that was a big culture shock.
Well, that was my question. Big was culture like,
shock.
Yeah, did you even get to experience the South before you made a decision to go to Georgia Tech?
Bro, I took one visit. And
that's like going into the bubble.
Bro, listen, it was like Labor Day weekend. And it was so much going on in the city, and Tech was playing Notre Dame when Brady Quinn was there.
Okay,
and it was just like I had never seen anything like it. You know what I'm saying? I'd never been in the South. I'd never been in Atlanta. Even in Atlanta is just its own anomaly within the South.
Right.
So it was just a very unique experience, and the thing that really struck a chord for me was all of the recruits that were coming to Georgia Tech. We just hit it off like no other. Like we kind of were like, it kind of felt like we knew each other for years.
Yeah, which made it feel like you were at home.
It felt like family.
Yeah, yeah.
So guys like Nick Clater, Tyler Mountain, like all these people that Mike Peterson, all these people that I went to school with, it was just like family. And so when I was taking all these other visits, it wasn't that type of feel. It was more like almost like a competitiveness, like of obviously we're all competitive as athletes, but it was almost like a zero sum, like I got to get more than you type of feel. Like It was weird. And so, but at Tech, it just felt like, hey, man, we could go do something together.
Yeah.
And we did.
Yeah.
And so that was a big part of me choosing there over all the other different options.
So what was that culture shock for you? Was it
what's your podcast rated? I mean, it was just like, bro, it was just too much, man. I'm gonna be real, it was just too much. I would say.
Well, how did you handle the culture shock? Let's ask that question.
I would say going to Georgia Tech, you're also kind of in a bubble,
right,
within Atlanta,
right,
because you're in Midtown. Now we escaped the bubble multiple times. Like we would always escape the bubble, but when you're on campus, you're going to school with engineers and people are there for school. They don't care nothing about football,
right?
And but I hated it when I was there because you had to really show up and be about that academic life.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't no free passes.
Right.
There wasn't no general education or African American studies, or it was like business management. Like you're going to go to class and you're going to apply yourself, or you're not going to make it.
Right.
And so the teachers didn't really care about football. We could be playing a Thursday night game versus Clemson and the library is still full.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. So you had to apply yourself. And I'm thankful because at the time I hated it. When I got to the league, I felt like I was more prepared than a lot of my peers.
Yeah. Because
I had kind of had this regimen and this discipline and this experience going to a university like Georgia Tech that was unique. And so I felt like I was better prepared.
Yeah. Well, what was that transition like to college as a young? I mean, you sound like you graduated young,
Mm-hmm.
And you made that transition to the South. What was that like? What was those things that made you feel like, hey, I'm ready. I know that I can do these things.
I think it was a process of building confidence over time, because in high school, if you're a top recruit, you're probably the best on your team. You're probably one of the best in your region. And so when you get to a D1 college, everybody was that same guy in their respective areas.
Right.
So there's a lot of measuring up to see oh, okay, he was a 4-star. So you're looking around, right? And you're kind of asking yourself, can I compete on this level? Mm. Can I be as successful or more successful on this level? And when I got to spring ball, they just threw me out there. I was running with the twos. I was playing a lot of special teams. And there was just some moments during that first spring camp where I was like, oh, I could do this. You know what I'm saying? I could, oh, okay. He tried to come and take me out, and it didn't go as he thought it was going to go. I held my ground and held my own. And there were some things where I was like, oh, okay, I could compete.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that started to build my confidence. And then the work ethic is what really also doubled down on that. It was not I had a crazy work ethic at the time, but when I got there, the amount of work that had to that got put into a college off season was whoa, this is different. I'm waking up at what time, and then I gotta go to class after the workout. I mean, so that to me was a big eye opener. Was how much work. They have this thing in NCAA. I don't know if they have it anymore, but it was a 20-hour rule.
Yeah.
Is that still in existence?
I'm not sure if it is or not, but
okay.
I do remember that.
How
when you guys came in is when that was starting to kind of come about. Right.
It was no such thing. Yeah. It really wasn't no such thing when I was there. It sounded good.
It was there.
It's we was at 20 hours by Wednesday. You know what I'm saying? A week. And so, having to really spend, it became a full-time job being a football player. And then on top of it, having to do the education part, man, you had to grow up real fast. You couldn't just sit in the room and play video games all day. Yeah. You had to really apply yourself.
And so that work ethic on the field translated over into the classroom. But it was still a slow build of just trying to really learn what the expectations are and then applying it in the same kind of format as being on the field.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know if I could have got in Georgia Tech, but
you would have been fine.
You know, but at the same time, I look at Georgia Tech as a football team. I look at it as a academic institution and how it prepared you for life. So when you were playing ball, were you thinking about playing in the NFL? Were you thinking about, man, I got this great education. I want to start focusing. I want to start to figure out what does my life look like, you know, in the workforce? Or did you have a good balance of saying, hey, if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, you know, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, man, I had it all figured out at 21.
What I was going to do. You start taking. I mean, you grew up early. You had to take care of yourself at 9. So
listen, bro. All I wanted to do was get to the league.
Okay,
that's all I cared about.
All right,
you feel me?
So that was a definitely road. That's what I wanted.
All I wanted to do was get to the league.
Yeah.
Like when I was going into my junior season at Georgia Tech, I was so ready to like leave that I told everybody, I'm like, this is my last year. I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
And that's how I prepared. So when I was going into the season, before the season, I started training. We was doing our normal training. And then me and my teammate, Anthony, we would drive to a guy named Chuck Smith.
Yeah, Chuck Smith.
So
he's still around.
I think he's with the Ravens.
Yeah.
Chuck at the time was like that guy when it came to pass rush. So all of the NFL, you know, greats, Richard Seymour, John Abraham, OC, they would all come down to Atlanta in the offseason and train with Chuck.
Right.
So somehow or another, I don't even remember, we got connected with Chuck, and every day after our first training of the day at Tech, me and my boy Anthony would drive. We get in this Nissan 1998 Nissan Maxima, and we would drive 30 minutes.
This car's filled up.
Yeah, filled up because he's bigger than me. We would drive to Gwinnett, and we would train with Chuck and all those pro guys for like 2 hours. So when you talk about measuring up and looking at, you seeing like, whoa, Richard Seymour just hit the bag. And it didn't come back up. It just died. Like he hit the bag so hard. Right. And it was like, oh, this guy is very. So we got to see it. And that type of training is what took me from probably being, you know, a mid-round pick to a first-round pick.
Yeah.
Was that summer.
Yeah.
That's what moved the needle for me.
Okay. See, for you to be able to see it.
Yeah. Because I seen people that was getting drafted and they was going to the league. I was like, oh, I could. Yeah, I'm on the same level as Buddy. He just got drafted in the 6th round. I could at least do that. But then when I took it to the next level of that training, it was like, oh, you know what I mean? I could be a great player.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so we
what a guy to see. And
bro,
it's probably one of the scariest moments in my career, not even happening to me.
You were a witness.
I was a witness.
Yeah, we all got those moments, right?
I'm sitting here. We playing the Raiders.
Oh,
and
okay.
Richard Seymour is there, and we have a guard. I think it was Ben Hamilton. I think that's what it was. And Richard Seymour catches him and lifts him up off the ground, slams him, and I remember standing there and I'm talking to him like, and he's not responding. And then I'm like, Ben, can you hear me? He's like, hey, who's that? Chris, I can't see. And like probably the scariest moment of my career, and I'm sure it was like absolutely terrifying for him because he couldn't even see. He was like concussed.
Whoa.
But everything was black. And so he goes off and it was a really bad concussion for him. But man, Richard Seymour was a absolutely animal.
Yeah.
So as a young kid watching that, and you realize like, oh man, this is what I have to do to get. Yeah. Okay. All right. And so did that work ethic when you got back? Did it creep up even more? I know what I got to do now to get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. They had set the bar even higher.
Yeah.
But it was a bar that I feel like I could get to. And so I we opened up versus Clemson on Thursday night, and that was like my coming out party after a whole summer of training.
Right.
And I had a great game. And that game, that performance put me on the map, basically. And it was nothing but obviously the grace of God of me being able to compete at that level and being, given that opportunity. But in addition, that preparation of that summer is really what put me in that position.
Yeah. What did that drive come from? That burning desire that you had? What intangibles do you think that, hey, these were the things that I can say that pushed me and forced me to become who I wanted to become?
There's a lot of different things, right? I think there was like the superficial things of, not wanting your family to be broke anymore, wanting to be able to take care of them and provide a different life for them. And those are the superficial things. I think at a deeper level, if you grow up playing athletics if you're an athlete of any sort and you put a lot of time into it, naturally part of your identity becomes associated with being an athlete. And it's a catch-22.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword because when you realize success and you get the accomplishments and the accolades and everybody's patting you on your back and, you kind of like double down on that identity, but it's very much so fickle. It's very fickle, right? Because your performance, right, your performance is associated with your identity. Right. And so for me, as a 21-year-old kid who was just like searching for like constant confirmations of my identity as an athlete, it put me on this performance hamster wheel of like, I had to perform to validate my identity. And all of the external forces were reinforcing that.
Right.
And so a lot of my drive and my passion was like seeking the affirmation of, I'm an athlete. This is my identity. Let's confirm that by my performance.
Right.
And so it wasn't the most healthiest dynamic in the scenario of you having to like fight for your identity through your performance. That's not sustainable.
Right.
Right? Because you can only compete for so long, and there has to be a decoupling of your identity from your performance. But when you're in sports, how do you achieve that? Because everything is your performance.
Yeah.
You go out and practice, and by the time you take a shower, the film's already up.
It's up and ready. So
you got the red blazer on you, and you're getting evaluated by every single move from the position of your toe and what your shoulder tilt, and everything is so like highly critical of what you do. Like you're consciously and subconsciously, registering that as like, oh, this is who I am. Right. So that drive in me was a lot was that motivation was from that. And, I had a pretty significant injury my rookie year where I tore my whole knee, ACL, and everything with an L was torn. And that, I always talk about that. But that moment was the first moment where that identity that had been built up was starting to be it started to have cracks in it.
Yeah. I mean, before we even jump into that piece, now you've taken this work ethic that you've built and you've grown over the years, and now you're sitting there with the opportunity to get drafted. You said that, I'm not coming back. This is what my goals are. And you took that approach, and now you're sitting here. It's 2010, and you become I think it was the 16th pick overall.
Yeah, 16th. Yeah,
I'm the 16th pick overall. How was that moment, those feelings, for you to do that?
Man, the draft was something very special. It was like a culmination moment, and I got invited out to New York to partake in all the different events and things leading up to the draft. So there's probably like 15 guys that were out there.
Yeah.
And we were going around New York and doing all these events and stuff. It was cool. Got to meet some really good guys during that time. And so going into the draft, you got to think I had gone through the combine, had gone through the pro days and all these things. And so, everybody's always projecting and, this mock draft versus that. But when I went into the green room on draft night, my agent's coming up to me and is like, hey, you're going anywhere from 6 to 12. I'm like, okay. At the time, Seattle had the 6th pick, right?
Yeah.
To 2010. Yeah. The 12th pick was, I want to say it was Cleveland. And these are two teams that I had some interaction with through the pre-draft and all that stuff and combine meetings and visits. And so, and there was a couple other teams that needed DNs. And so I'm like, okay, that makes sense. By literally like the 3rd pick, there had been like 3 or 4 trades within the top 15 picks. Right. So everything got reshuffled. Right. So the needs of every team was different. Right. So I'm not even, there's some teams that weren't even flying me out for the visit because they're like, oh, I'm picking 25. He's not even going to be there. Right. Now they're at, you know what I mean? So there was a lot of reshuffling that occurred. And, my agents didn't know where the heck I was going. So I don't even know why I believed them. But I bought all the way into that. And so when they got to I think pick 6 was Russell Okung.
Yep, Russell Okung.
Yep. And so, and then I think pick 7 was Joe Hayden to the Browns. And so all these things started to shift. And then the first defensive end taken was Tyson. He has a Samoan last name. He's still in the league, I think. He played for the Steelers, I think, last year. Tyson Alua, I forget his. I'm not going to murder his name. I'm not going to do that to his last name. But he got picked by the Jaguars. And then the Eagles picked Brandon Graham.
Right.
And then the Giants picked Pierre Paul. And so at the time, most draft boards had me as the number 1 DN. So I got 3 DNs that went before me. And the cameras come right over to you. The lights that they bright. I can't even see. I'm sweating coming down my forehead. And I'm like, man, what's going on? And so I finally get my agent's like, hey, Tennessee's going to take you. And so that little phone rings and I'm pick up and it's Jeff Fisher on the line. And, he's like, hey, how you like to be a Titan? I was like, I wish I was picking a couple picks earlier, but I'm glad to be a Titan. And so ended up getting selected, man, and the rest is history. But it was it was a great moment. It was a great moment. It was a blessing, and really just a dream come true. I had my family there. It was a great moment.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I mean, you go on and you make that transition into the league, and you end up playing 9 years. Take me a little bit through, what it takes to really grind through 9 years of playing in this league with injuries, ups and downs, highs and lows, teams that are struggling, teams that are winning. How was your mindset? What was the things that kept that drive going for you now that you've gotten the money? Because I think a lot of people, when you start thinking about, the money aspect of it, it's like, okay, I got my money. Yeah. Then I don't want to go out and perform. So what was that thing that was still driving you to go out and perform at a high level for 9 years in the NFL?
Yeah, it's one of those things that it wasn't like a constant thing. It was, you evolve over time, and things that matter to you when you're 21 don't quite matter as much when you're 25 and you got 2 kids and are married. And so for me, it was just from that injury that I had my rookie year, that sort of established a baseline for me on what it was going to take to stay in the league.
Because it stands for not for long.
3-year average career.
Right.
Take out quarterbacks, take out snappers and punters. You're at like 2 years, 1.9 years, something crazy. So for me, I had 3 knee surgeries on the same knee within 2 years.
Wow.
So I'm like, shit, I'm gonna be just another bust. Like I'm out the league in my mind. I'm fighting that. I'm like, okay, how do I prevent becoming just another statistic of some guy who came in and got injured and was washed? So I really had to take an intentional approach around my health and building a team that could really help support me. Because as you know, man, like this ain't no knock to any team, but people think that we're getting the highest level of care in the NFL when it comes to like, injury recovery and therapies and things like that. That's not the case. Like it's different from team to team. And, a lot of times the best people are not affiliated with the team.
Yeah.
A lot of times the people that are affiliated with the team just wrote the biggest check.
Yeah. So
for me, it's like, I've realized that early on. I was like, wait a second. Like I was getting maybe better treatment at Georgia Tech. You know what I'm saying? And so I was like, oh, I would watch some of the older guys and how they did it. They was flying people in. Like this person's from, LA and whatever. I got my chiropractor coming before the game on Saturday, come through. I'm like, bet. Like I'm going and meeting all these different massage therapists, chiropractors, all these kinesiologists, acupuncture. I'm like, oh wait, why don't we got this at the facility? Yeah. So that was the beginning of my eyes opening of like, oh, there's a big world out here of like how to take care of yourself. And that's what really, that resonated with me because I was just at a point where I wasn't getting great answers. Like you can only do so many cortisone shots and ice and stem. And I was like, hey,
get you back.
Yeah, this ain't gonna do it. I'm on my third surgery at 23.
Yeah.
I gotta find something else.
Yeah.
So I was kind of forced into this mindset of finding out ways to be more proactive about how I took care of myself.
That's what an injury do for you.
100%.
So now you're starting to think about this league completely different now, and how you take care of yourself, how you take care of your body. We just discussed a little bit ago about this mental aspect of it. The mental aspect of the game is not just about the X's and O's. It's also the mental aspects of who am I as a person? Who am I as, how do I manage my negative thoughts? How do I manage, my highs and lows? How do I separate when I have a discussion with someone that doesn't go well, whether it's an argument with a wife or family members asking for something? How do I mentally remove that so I can then still go out and perform at a high level? Have you ever thought about that in the process? Did you come up with situations throughout your career where you didn't, that was pulling your focus a little bit away from the field, that you had to really, dive into the mental side of how do I manage this before I step on the field so I didn't get injured, so I can play at a high level? Did you have any instances like that in your career?
Yeah, I mean, if it were up to football coaches, they just want you to eat, sleep, and then play football. But that's just not how life works, right? Life is dynamic. There's a lot of factors. There's family. There's all these different things that you experience. And so there is I would say a dichotomy between a lot of times your home life and like life outside of just the bubble of being the athlete persona. And then there's like who you are to your kids. Like they don't care about what jersey you got on and who you are. They don't really care. My son still doesn't really listen to me sometimes when it comes to football or athletic stuff.
Anything in sports.
It's like, wait, I did do it at the highest level. But so there was moments where, things might not have been going great off the field. And that's where like mental discipline comes in, right? Because your natural tendency is to like seek comfort in certain moments like that. And so you got to fight that urge and that tendency to say, I just want to escape it.
Yeah.
So, if things aren't going right in a certain area of your life, You know, you got to really focus on the things that you can control.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was always my routine. I could always generally control my routine. I could wake up early. I could get to the facility early. I could go through my little, stretching and mobility and my extra weights and film study and whatever the case was, right? Like there wasn't nothing that was preventing me from doing those things. I just had to like commit to it.
Right.
Regardless of what all the other things and what was going on in my life at the time. And so the more that I doubled down on my routine and my preparation, the more that kind of kept my mindset steady.
Yeah.
There's like everybody talks about the law of attraction, but there's actually a more important law called the law of resonance. And what that means is essentially you only get what you think you deserve. Right?
Yeah.
So for me,
training that subconscious.
Your input, all these inputs to my subconscious.
Yep.
Oh, Derrick, you woke up early today.
Yeah.
You came in, you got your reps in.
There you go.
You did all this work and you're telling yourself you deserve to be successful. Right? Because you put the work and the time and energy and effort into it. And those were the seasons that I had my best results. Right. It's like, dang, Derrick, you're here every day at 7 a.m., an hour before, you're staying an hour after, and it's showing up on the field. Same way in business, right?
Yeah.
So you have to tell yourself that you're worthy of getting positive results and realizing success because you've put the work and the time and the effort into it. So you're like, I'm waiting on my results.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like this ain't no luck. This is like, I don't know if your coaches ever told you this, like the harder you work, the luckier you get. Right. Yeah. So that
started back in high school.
Yeah. So that's the thing that I've always kind of like tried to maintain is I control what I can control.
Yeah. Awesome. I'd like to do a quick segment here called a 2-minute rapid fire. 2 minutes going into halftime. And so it'd be some easy toss ups here. Favorite stadium to play in?
Seattle.
Yeah.
All right. I say y'all. You a Seahawk at heart probably, but yeah, favorite stadium I would say is Seattle. Or Kansas City.
All right. We're going to stick with Seattle.
Okay. We'll ride with Seattle.
Funniest teammate?
Oh, God. There's so many. Will Hayes, Brian Arakpo. Woodyard. There's so many. Harry Douglas.
I hear some stories that's running through your mind right now.
You can see it. It's playing right now.
All right. The most underrated player that you played against or with?
Carl Klug, man. Carl Klug was super savvy. Just had it.
Really savvy, man.
Yeah, very slippery. It was like just very effective. Didn't get a lot of opportunities, but when he was on the field, he was productive. Yeah, Carl Klug.
That's a good one. I do like that one.
Yeah.
Any pregame rituals?
Meditation. Yeah, meditation. Yeah.
And how did you get in? I mean, just as an athlete at the time that we're having this battle with how do we as an athlete step up and be able to own our injuries and be able to own our thoughts and things that we're having. Now we're bringing in sports psychologists. That's starting. How did you get into the meditation aspect of it?
Just trying to sharpen who I am mentally, physically, in my performance. And the more everything that we probably like, I don't know for you, I'll speak for myself, but everything that I was taught in terms of like how to get ready for a game was like putting you in fight or flight. Mm-hmm. It was like, let's take this Red Bull, let's get jacked.
Yeah.
And like that works to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But
hit that smell salt.
Yeah, all that. Like I used to see some of my teammates have concoctions of Red Bull, prescription pills, salt, alcohol. I'm like, I don't know how your heart's not exploding right now. But when I like sort of took on this approach of let me kind of just be in the moment and let my body and my training, like let my body react to certain things that happen. Because most of when you're playing sport, you're in that flow.
Right.
You're when you're the most effective and the most successful as an athlete, you're in a state of flow. Mm-hmm. So my mindset was how do I get my mind primed to get into that state of flow where I'm not all rigidy and jacked up. It's like, no, I'm this is like almost like a art. When I watch athletes now, it's like it's art. Yeah. It's just because it's like that's a gift that you got from God and you're expressing your gift. Yeah. And that is special. And so for me, it was like, I got to get my mind ready to be in flow because I think that that's going to give me better results. Yeah. So that's how meditation kind of came about.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's one area that I wish I would have spent more time early in my career.
It was later in my career.
Thinking about how to do that because now I do it every day.
Yeah.
And it's changed the way that I approach a lot of situations that come up that's tough. I now know how to kind of get into that mindset and be in that flow. So that's why I was curious about that. Now you have a 9-year career. You leave the game on your own terms. Mm-hmm. Most of us, there's an injury, there's something that's just kind of like, all right, you're done. Like my Achilles, tore my Achilles, and it was kind of like after 10 years, all right, done. Yeah. Spoke for me. You got a chance to walk away from the game in a relative good spot because the game beat you up. Yeah. And you said something earlier about decoupling. How did you decouple that identity of I'm a football player to make that transition into the work that you're doing now as a business guy, as a philanthropist, as a father? How did you kind of take that mindset and say, hey, I need to?
I didn't do it perfectly at all. It was a constant tension throughout my career. I knew about it. I was aware of it, but I wasn't always effective at doing it. Yeah. It's because you're fighting. You're like, all these external factors are trying to reinforce it. And then you're like, no, I know that's not real. Right. So upon retiring, I went and got some counseling where I was just like, I need to bring closure to this moment. Because I did go out on my own. Yeah. I had some opportunities to keep playing, but I knew mentally that I was done. Right. And so I had to bring closure and tell myself that it was okay that this chapter was coming to an end. And the things that served me, let's take those on to the next phase of my life. Right. And the things that didn't, let's leave them right here. Yeah. Because while I had the awareness and I was working through that, I found myself bringing some of those same unhealthy tactics into business, where my performance was my identity. And it's like results. And results-based motivation is like, a lot of it's kind of like out of fear. Yes. Because it's based in fear. It's like, I got to get this result. If not, who am I? Right. Right. So it's I don't want
to be that statistic.
Yeah, I don't want to be the guy that started a business that failed. Yeah. And so for me, it was like, all right, how do I? And God actually did it for me. He didn't wait for me to go through another 9 years. He's like, the first project that I was working on was in my hometown, and in my mind, I was going to will it. I was going to will it to happen, regardless of any signals that God was giving me or any discernment that he was trying to instill in me. I was just going to make it happen because I had to make it happen. And it didn't happen. Yeah. And so that moment was like the same type of moment where I tore my ACL. I was like, okay, we're not going to do this again. I didn't already, gave you your medicine. Like, hey, look, we're not going to go through the same route. And I was like, okay, thank you. Thank you, God, because I was able to detach, my identity from my performance and be more process oriented than results oriented. Yeah. And that's especially when you're in business, a lot of athletes think that they can have that same level of success and not put in the work.
Put the work in.
You got to the league from 20 years of work. Right. What makes you think you're just going to go from peak to peak? Right. And so there's a valley. Yeah. And so the valley is very lonely. It's especially in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
It's lonely.
Yeah.
You know, it's on you, which is all good when it's good, but it's all bad when it's bad, because you can't point the finger. It's like, it's me. And so, but I love that about entrepreneurship. And so, you know, God kind of like had to just, you know, shake me up a little bit and say, hey, look, we're not going to start this process and this cycle over again. We're going to focus on day-to-day process. Mm-hmm. When you focus on day-to-day process, the results will come.
Yeah.
And so that's the approach I've tried to take.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's tough, man. Business is hard. And I experienced it early in my career when I made that transition, the same thing. It's like, hey, you've done this already, been there.
Yeah.
Let's figure out a different process, because as an athlete, you think that, you know, because hey, here's where you're going, here's what your day looks like, here's your check, here's, you know, so you have all these things that are happening for you. And then now all of a sudden you're in a place where, how do I build my own schedule? Okay. Now you're expecting all these things to happen just as fast as it was happening when you were playing. And so trying to get your mind away from that, it's a lot of work. And so there's a lot of lows in that valley, you know, but you learn and you get through it. Last couple questions here I got for you. When you start to think about this generation and how you can impart some wisdom into them and, you know, kids and parents as they're battling through this transition of NIL, transfer portal, you know, is there something that comes to mind that you would, you know, hopefully kids can take, you know, some solace in and move forward in their life with?
Dang, man, I want to be deep right now and just give you something profound. I don't know why it's coming to my mind. Get off social media. That's what's coming to my mind.
Yeah.
Like, I promise you, man, like, I think that's the tip of the iceberg of what's happening in our kids' culture today. Is everybody's so hyper aware of everybody else.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I see it with my kids. Yeah. You know, it's like, it becomes toxic in a lot of ways, where there's so much comparison going on, and there's so much like ridicule, and there's so much, you know, well, this person's doing this and they have that, and I'm comparing myself to this highlight. I would say for the youth, and I'm still trying to be a great parent to my kids because I don't have all the answers. When I was focused on, like I said earlier, what I could control, like controlling what I can control, not comparing myself to what this person's doing, what they have or haven't done, that to me is a lot of wasted energy. And you only have so much energy to give. So you want to put your energy in the things that you can control and that are going to give you a positive return on investment. And so being on social media, comparing yourself to the next person, you don't know what's going on when that camera's off, right? So you're comparing yourself to people's highlights, and you don't know what their lowlights are. And I think a lot of times you can look on the internet and look at social media, and it starts to define what success is for you. Mm-hmm. So I would say, before you get convoluted by all the different perspectives and opinions out there, you got to have a very solid, firm foundation in who you are and what you want to accomplish, and then pressure check that.
Right.
Because a lot of us have been programmed to think like, oh, this is what we want. But when you really break it down, have I been programmed to want this, or do I intrinsically really want this?
Yeah.
And so I tell my son all the time, I said, look, we're not going to get on this travel that, athlete this, just because it looks cool and that's what everybody else is doing. Mm-hmm. If that's what you're passionate about and you truly want to do, I'm with you, bro. But I'm not driving to South Carolina to watch you play blah, 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 just because that's what everybody else is doing. I'm not doing that, bro. Because chances are you doing that, you know, later on, you know, they are what they are. But I would just say, like, have a firm foundation in who you are and what you want to do, apart from all the noise.
Yeah.
That's why social media came to mind.
Well, I mean, you say you didn't want to go deep, but you took us deep. And I think it's so important. And I mean, you know, my kids don't have social media. I don't give it to them because that comparison piece and wanting them to figure out who they are and giving them the space to do that. And
Yeah.
they upset with me because I won't let them have TikTok and Instagram and all that. But at the same time, their focus is their sport. And so my son does do 7-on-7 travel sports.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because he's passionate about it. He wants to. He
That's
takes
awesome.
care of his body. He works hard. He does all that. And so when you show me that's what you are willing to do, you're willing to put the work in, then I'm willing to take my time and sacrifice
100%.
and drive to Atlanta twice. And,
100%.
And so,
Yeah.
it's we follow those same principles. And so, Derrick, my last question for you, man, because it's been a fantastic conversation with you, is, if you had to look back at Derrick and say, that one or two intangibles that you were able to hang your hat on throughout your career that's stuck with you, from high school through college and now in this entrepreneur business world, what would those in one or two intangibles be?
Two things: curiosity and perseverance. Don't stay stagnant in the knowledge that you have. Yeah. There's always more to learn, and when you hit those roadblocks and you hit those detours and the adversity, persevere through it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like curiosity to me is a lot about problem solving, and being resourceful.
Yeah.
Right. And so, those two things I think are have been part of what has carried me and moved me forward in life and has really helped me.
Yeah.
So
that coincide with, on our, within our podcast, our symbol is the infinity symbol. And then in that infinity symbol, there's two dots that's broken up. And for me, it's a big symbol because it's been a big part of my life and journey, is that we as people and me as just personal, the growth is constantly evolving. It's constantly changing.
Sure.
You will come to some spots where you have some hiccups. And that's what those 2 points that separates from that infinity symbol represent, is that there will be some bumps along the way. How do you pick up and gain the knowledge to keep persevering and working through it? And so, Derrick, this has been a fantastic interview, man. I really enjoyed, hanging out with you, chatting with you. So I really appreciate you coming on the Intangible podcast. I think our viewers and listeners are going to learn a lot today. And, again, appreciate you, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
man.
absolutely.
Appreciate it.